Welcome to Beyond the Scale, Zero Carb Healing. Stephanie and I are glad to have you here with us today, and we have Dani Conway with us. She is a keto and carnivore nutritionist, and I would say most importantly, diagnostician. Does a lot of blood work and really focuses and finds what works for her clients through blood work and all of those different kind of testing. And so we're glad to have her here today. She's board certified in hormone optimization, and we'll just have her, if she would, tell us a little bit about herself and how she works with her clients.
Awesome. Well, thank you ladies for having me. It's great to be here with you, Steph and Amy. Here, I'm Dani Conway, and yes, I do a lot of functional testing in my practice. I work to find the root cause of symptoms that women, mostly women. I do work with men as well, but it seems like women are the ones who kind of seek out the treatment for all the stuff that's going on more often. So I would say 90% of my practice is women, ages 35 to 65. And I do work with men as well. But again, really wanting to focus on finding the root cause of the underlying hormone imbalances, digestive issues, reasons why people, can't lose weight. They are having bloating, constipation, gas, diarrhea, anxiety, depression, insomnia, hot flashes, night sweats, PCOS. I mean, the list just goes on and on. So again, just really kind of focusing on that root cause. And my approach with clients is always food first. So getting the food right, as that's the foundation for everything that we do. And I like to say, if food isn't right, nothing else can be right. And then working to kind of build on that foundation with hormones and gut health and everything else.
Great. That leads right into kind of our first set of questions about gut health. And the ever popular topic among carnivores, poop.
Poop talk. Let's dive in.
Right. Let's talk poop. So something that I heard a lot when I first went carnivore was it's normal. Well, first of all, going to the bathroom as a carnivore isn't the problem that a lot of people think that it is, but also that you might not go every day and that that's okay. That's what I've always heard. But I've heard you say that you should go every day. So kind of explain the reason you feel that way.
Yeah. So I think we tend to see kind of two ends of the spectrum. So first I want to just talk about this for a second. Two ends of the spectrum as far as going too much or going too little, meaning maybe not going every day or just going a few times a week, to people that are having diarrhea 3 to 4 times a day, can't leave the house, like that type of thing. So neither one of those are optimal, basically. And so with the not going daily and some people just going a few times a week, we basically have hormones that we metabolize every single day, and we have, toxins that we're going to metabolize and things that need to exit the body, and they leave via sweat, breath, stool, and urine. And yes, of course, we are urinating every day, often, hopefully multiple times a day. So we do get some toxins leaving that way. But when we are kind of, have those detox pathways backed up, someone might experience constipation, or otherwise known as not going as often. And then, there are definitely some people who say they don't have any pain or they're not bloated. And I think that even those cases that I see in my practice where that might be the case when they start, and then they start optimizing their digestion and using things like a castor oil pack and maybe Epsom salt baths and things that can sort of magnesium help to sort of move things along, so to speak, they do start going a little bit more regularly from when they were going before. So I do see that, in some cases it still might be every other day, but I wouldn't want it to be any less than every other day. And then the flip side, if I could comment on the opposite end of the spectrum too, is that, everything from underlying digestive issues to detoxing from when someone first goes carnivore and they're getting rid of a lot of the refined foods and processed foods, to, eating. A lot of people know that if they eat too much fat, they can end up with diarrhea, loose stools, uncomfortable digestive issues. But also what people don't realize is too much protein can also cause some of those similar issues. So it's really a balance of fine tuning with, again, your macronutrients, your protein and fat, and then kind of going from there with the other stuff that might be going on.
Okay. Good to know.
Can we jump to our question we were going to ask about protein and fat malabsorption, and maybe how you know if that's going on and what to do about that?
Yeah, so it's a really big question, just, as far as protein and fat malabsorption. So to try to break that down a little bit, one big symptom that you might not be, or one big way to know that you might not be absorbing your nutrients correctly would be low energy and fatigue. When we eat food, we're supposed to get energy from that. So that would be one, tired after meals, which is also a sign of insulin resistance as a side note. But, low energy, a lot of the bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea would be the most obvious ones, because that is directly gut related. And then as far as, what to do about those types of symptoms, well, making sure that you're not eating foods that are inflaming you. So that would be the first thing. I see clients who take a gradual approach to going carnivore, or take that cold turkey approach. So I think that they both work, and someone should do what works best for themselves, because there are going to be people that can only do cold turkey or can only go gradual to be successful. And then as far as the digestive stuff, first would be making sure that they've eliminated, the dairy, the eggs, in addition to the refined foods. And then kind of see how things go after that. And then, if their symptoms persist, then they just either have to stick it out and see if they do resolve, or that's when, for me and, my work, that's when like the blood testing and stool testing and things would come in, if, to look for underlying things that might be happening or being like causes of the symptoms.
Now, is that somehow related to the MTHFR mutation? Does that have something to do with protein malabsorption, or?
So the MTHFR gene mutation has more to do with detoxification and poor detoxification. So if we sort of look at it sort of going backwards, yes, B vitamins are a part of that, usage of B vitamins, of course, absorption of B vitamins. So there is a little bit of a nutrient absorption component with that. But that methylation and that mutation is more about needing to optimize detoxification, because the body is, usually struggles to do the detox process, if you will, if someone, when someone does have that mutation.
Okay. All right. The other thing that we see a lot of advice on is hydration. Yeah. And a lot of advice to, you only need to drink when you're thirsty. That if you drink too much, then you can deplete your electrolytes. Talk a little bit about that.
Cheers. No.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's like two separate components there. So as far as hydration goes, I think that there are a lot of people out there who can drink when they're thirsty, and that is enough water for their bodies. There are others out there that have broken thirst cues, just like they have broken hunger cues. So they may never get thirsty, or drinking till thirsty might be too late to keep them hydrated as they need to be hydrated. And I see this on blood work, where people come to me and they are saying that they're drinking when they're thirsty. And I look at all, a handful of different kidney markers, and they're, appearing dehydrated. So that, in my opinion, shows me that that's not really working. There's a school of thought that those who drink tons of plain water without electrolytes will flush out all the electrolytes. I also know many people who drink water without electrolytes, and they are very well balanced, so to speak. So I do kind of fall in between the starting someone on a general recommendation, even though many disagree with that. And then, learning their thirst cues, just like they have to learn their hunger cues. And then as far as the electrolytes go, I think I'm a believer in electrolytes and using salt. I think that our bodies can very well tell us if something's too salty. Well, then you probably shouldn't be using that much salt or that much electrolytes. So I do think from that perspective that someone can sort of gauge that electrolyte gauge, like I just said, like up or down based on what they need. I know what they need. I know for me, in the summertime, I need way more electrolytes in the wintertime, but I still need the electrolytes in the wintertime because it's cold and it is hard to drink when I'm not using the electrolytes. So it is definitely a fine balance. And then, yeah, so I think does that answer the question? I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I think so. The general advice of either eat when hungry and eat until you're full, and drink when thirsty until you're no longer thirsty is good general advice, but you really have to look at the individual and how things are working for them and whether or not their hunger signals and their thirst signals are working properly. So yeah, that helps a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And especially like on the hunger signal thing, a lot of people have leptin resistance. Their leptin levels are really high, so they have no satiety signal. So eating till you're full is not going to work for some people. So, looking at, again, the individual recommendation for that, there's a lot of things out there like eat till you're stuffed. I disagree with that as well. So, and in any case, I think we're saying the same thing, but I definitely agree that it needs to be an individual basis.
I'm so glad to hear you say all that, because Stephanie and I have been talking a lot about it, because I've kind of gotten to this place where things finally seem kind of natural, that I eat when I'm hungry and I drink when I'm hungry, and I'm not forcing myself to do anything. And I used to drink like a gallon of water a day because that's what I kept hearing everybody say.
Sure.
And finally I was like, shouldn't I feel these things? And I am feeling these things. And I partly need to listen to my body, because you have to have a drive for thirst, just like you do for food, right? And yeah, so I'm so glad to hear you say that, because you hear so many people say different things about, you need to be eating 3 times a day and you need to be drinking this much. And it's so confusing. Like, even if you've been doing this a long time, it's very confusing. And oh my gosh, all of a sudden, maybe I'm doing this wrong all this time and I don't know it.
Right.
So yeah, that's great to hear. So thank you for that. What else, Stephanie? We were going to talk about
kind of related to gut health, also like the neurotransmitters and GABA and dopamine. And what can you tell us about? Okay.
All right. I've got one.
I think really the reason I was just going to explain why we had that question in there is because of some things that Amy and I both experience with like restless legs and dopamine. And I don't know anything about GABA. I just know that has something to do with it, but I don't know what. I didn't know if you could talk about that or not.
Got it. Well, GABA is a calming substance, so to speak. So when our bodies don't have enough GABA, or when the neurotransmitters are low and things aren't really, let's just say, in balance, then that's where you're going to start to get symptoms like anxiety, depression. Like you said, restless leg can be part of that. Insomnia can be a big piece of that too. Hormonal imbalances. So from like progesterone has a connection with GABA as well. So there's a lot of different pathways and enzymes and things that could be impacting that.
Okay.
So I was going to ask, I recently read Dr. Gabor Mate's trauma book, and also I've been reading the Chris Palmer book about mental illness and brain energy. And I just wondered, I know in your video with Kelly, you talked about how those things can really impact the nervous system past, you know, things that happen in childhood or whatever it may be. And so I think Stephanie and I wanted to talk to you about mental health and, you know, anxiety and depression. If you see, I would imagine in your practice that that's a common complaint, those types of things. And, you know, as a nurse in the medical community for 20 years, you know, there was never any talk about the brain and the body being connected, and how, you know, things in the past, traumas, whatever, affect your nervous system and cause dysregulation. And yeah, I think we kind of attached to that part of you talking with Kelly about that in your video. So I just wondered if you could explain that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, with anxiety and depression, that tends to be actually a digestive issue. A lot of people think mood issue, which it absolutely is. But our neurotransmitters, which is our brain chemicals, are serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine. They're made from amino acids. Where do we get our amino acids from? Protein. So this is one reason why many with mental health struggles who go carnivore have such amazing results, because many of them were not consuming enough protein prior to, and of course all the sugar and refined carbs can kind of take over and really, you know, I always say, like, we always see what sugar does to kids with their hyperactivity and their behavior, but we never think about it in the sense of like what that actually happens, what it does to adults. And so with adults, it tends more to manifest as mood imbalances, anxiety, depression, things like that. So back to kind of the connection with the neurotransmitters is the digestion, improving absorption, just getting the right foods, meaning meat, you know, and animal fats. And then that, you know, helping to also heal the digestion so the body can absorb those nutrients and do what it needs to do with them as far as making neurotransmitters. And then that can really have an impact on improving brain health and mood and all of that. Now, as far as trauma, you know, just trauma goes, when we kind of look at dealing with trauma, a lot of people have things that they've feelings that they've stuffed, so to speak, or traumas that they haven't dealt with. And that can, you know, as far as like I've said before, the body hears everything that the mind says. So what we're believing, what we're saying to ourselves, are we continuously reliving old experiences in our mind and feeling anxious as we're thinking about these experiences? Like all of this type of stuff is connected. And no, you're right. I mean, it's unfortunate that these types of things aren't recognized as in the medical community as, you know, looking for the root cause of why people are struggling with these types of symptoms.
I took care of oncology patients and gave chemo all the time. And, you know, it just always struck me that there was no, you know, consideration of the things that the other parts of their life other than their illness, you know, and maybe the things that have brought these, not just metabolic, you know, as far as your physical body, but your mental body too, and how that's all playing out in the illness that has come about, you know.
Right.
I never heard a doctor ask a patient what their diet had been like, you know. Yeah.
I hear stories every now and again, or I'll see someone on a Facebook group or Facebook page say, you know, actually acknowledge, the doctor will acknowledge like keto, low carb, or carnivore as a, you know, healthy way of eating. And I always love those types of posts because they're so few and far between.
Yeah, for sure.
So you'd mentioned hormones, and I see a lot of questions from women, and I've had this experience myself too. What imbalances cause hair loss? I know I have hypothyroidism, I have Hashimoto's, so I know that caused hair loss, and that's hormone related. But are there what exact balances? What should they be doing to kind of put things back in order to combat that?
So I think it's important to realize that hair loss has many root causes. So that's the first thing. And so it might be thyroid for some people, it might be biotin deficiency for other people, it might be other B vitamin deficiency for, someone else. And so, and you kind of have to look at where someone is in their journey. So if someone is just gone keto or carnivore and they start experiencing hair loss, it could be from the dietary change, it could be from malabsorption still happening from their previous situation before they change their food. You've got to give the body a chance to adjust to the new what they're eating now, and get the benefits of eating carnivore or keto, animal based. And then with that being said, also making sure someone's getting enough overall. So under eating is a huge problem for hair loss. And that goes for both under eating protein and or fat. So under eating either macronutrient can also contribute to hair loss. So again, I hate to always say like, well, it depends, but if someone is always giving a blanket statement and not saying that it depends and just giving a general answer and saying that's kind of how it is for everyone, that's actually like, you should run away from that person really really fast.
I agree. Yeah, there's no one size fits all for anything, any kind of advice or
right. And I think like, even not to just like, beat the digestive issue thing again, however, absorption, right? So I get clients who have been carnivore for 2 years and their test results come back and they're deficient in B vitamins. Okay, they're eating beef all the time. They're eating meat, which is like the richest foods in those vitamins. So again, we go back to what's going on at the, root cause level that they're not able to absorb those nutrients. Where is the inflammation still happening, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I actually had, even though I had been carnivore for a year and a half, I guess, at this point, but I kind of played around with the higher fat and moderate protein. And originally, I guess back up a little bit, several months into carnivore, my hair loss slowed dramatically and it started growing back. Then I decided to try the higher fat and moderate protein and it started falling out again. But I was also having a lot of digestive issues. So I this is probably like a malabsorption issue. So I just kind of backed up to like a 70-30 ratio now. And it's fine. It's
low protein is a very large cause of hair loss. Absolutely.
Okay.
And that can be a sole cause. So I don't want, people to watch us and think like they have to do all these fancy things with B vitamins and testing and all of that. I mean, even just, adjusting macros, if someone's tried moderate or lower protein and then experienced that problem with the hair loss, I mean, maybe increase just a little bit, and see if they can kind of push it up to a threshold of like where that symptom, in this case, hair loss, would stop.
Okay. And that possibly could be a cause for low protein also, like in lab work.
In lab work. So low protein on lab, well, yeah, indirectly, but low protein on lab work, I also look at gut health, digestion, malabsorption, leaky gut. So yeah.
Yeah. It all seems to tie back to gut health.
Yeah. And what's funny about that, so years ago in my very first functional medicine training, we were taught to look at hormones, then gut, then the detoxification systems. And then, over the years, it actually shifted for me because I realized like, if we don't fix the gut first, we can't fix the hormones. We can't fix anything else. So that's been a switch that I flipped like quite a few years ago.
That makes sense.
Right. Can I ask Dani, just as a personal question, I'm so curious, what are the issues that most of your clients come to see you with? Like, do they all have in common, you know, gut health for the most part issues, or is it female hormones, or how does that work?
So probably the most common symptom that I get is weight loss or lack of weight loss or weight loss stall or plateau or weight gain. You know, I've been doing this for a while and I've gained. So when I start to dig in, yes, it does. There's a lot of hormone imbalances for sure. A lot of clients also come to me for thyroid work because their doctors won't run the expanded thyroid with all of the markers. They'll just run the TSH, which is great if they want to look at pituitary function or even, you know, more of the adrenal stuff going on. But again, it should be used as part of an entire hormone panel or thyroid panel. But basically looking at, the most common symptom, lack of weight loss, can't lose, or, you know, they're stuck, etc. And then as far as like looking under the surface, what we find is very much the gut. But I would say that most women feel like it's their hormones and are surprised when we have the digestive imbalances that we find. So they're thankful, like, oh my gosh, I never would have figured this out otherwise, as far as that goes. But, you know, again, a little bit of surprise because people can have digestive issues without having diarrhea 3 times a day. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, you know, just your everyday person kind of thinks of everything as a separate system. Like hormones are this, digestion is this, metabolism is this, and they're all separate and not interconnected. But
right. I think I talked about that somewhere a few days ago. Maybe it was in a post or something. I don't really remember, but yes, like metabolism is more than just the food you put in your body, you know, and hormones are more than just your hormones. They're connected to digestion. You know, the liver plays a huge part with hormones. Blood sugar and cortisol are connected. It just, there's a lot of different connections. And, you know, in most human defense, they go to the doctor and it's like, this finger hurts. Okay, so let's try to fix the finger. It's not like, let's look at where the connection goes all the way up kind of thing, just as like that's probably a terrible example, but I think you guys get my drift.
yeah.
Well, yeah, because everybody gets sent to a specialist for something, right? And they don't communicate with each other. And, you know, it just leads to the practice of that we're parts and pieces and not, you know, connected in any way. And definitely that is how it works in the medical community, you know. The doctors rarely get together and talk about one patient and what's going on with them, you know.
When you have a symptom that shows up as hair loss, you don't automatically think I've got a malabsorption issue or a digestive issue.
Exactly. And so I guess the good example for that would be like, okay, I have hair loss, so let me switch my shampoo.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of people start, is trying to find those topical treatments for that, not realizing that it's gut related and food related.
Well, I mean, and that's what our world is made up of. Like, you could go into the drugstore and find a Band-Aid for almost anything. And I don't mean the sticky Band-Aid, right?
Right.
All right, so let's shift for a minute and talk about something that maybe some people want to talk about and maybe some people really don't want to. Macros, fat and protein, calories. Does any of this matter?
My favorite conversation. So I think it all matters in the context of the individual person, and there's going to be nuances with every person, what they have going on, what their history and background has been, what their goals are, all of that. So I think it's, I'm just going to say, irresponsible to say calories don't matter and that they don't exist. And let's just say they didn't, you know, food is energy. So let's throw calories out the window for a second. I actually started teaching calories as energy about 8 years ago now. So if we look at energy and we consume too much energy or more energy than our body needs to use on a daily basis, it's going to store it. It's not going to poop it out. Speaking of poop talk, not just going to eliminate it, it's going to store it somewhere. So if we take in too much energy, we're going to store it. If we don't take in enough energy, well, that's debatable. Some will say that you can never consume too little food, that you would always lose. And we've seen that not to be the case, because I was one of the people where if I didn't eat enough, my weight loss stalled. So, over the years, I had to increase in order to lose weight and lose fat, change body composition. So, it's going to be nuanced for every person. I do believe in a correct caloric deficit for somebody to lose weight effectively and not ruin their metabolism. I don't believe in caloric restriction. I think when we get into restriction, that's when we're going to be ruining hormones, under eating, affecting thyroid, adrenals, all of that stuff. So I do believe there's a difference between caloric restriction and caloric deficit. And I don't believe that everyone should be in that deficit for long periods of time. The body adapts, and we want to keep our metabolism as healthy as possible. So aside from, cycling, I'm just going to say energy up and down, or calories up and down for the sake of our conversation, making adjustments to protein and fat. I think it's more talked about now, but movement, exercise, resistance training is a huge piece of this puzzle. It's not talked about enough as far as resistance training being one of the best ways to improve insulin sensitivity from insulin resistance. So that's another big piece of it as well. But, just to go back to the question, calories, macros, what we take in, what we expend, it all matters. And there's always going to be a nuance for each and every person.
Can we go from that into what you think about fasting? Intermittent or long-term or anything? Do you like that for anybody?
How long do we have? I'm just kidding. No. So as far as fasting goes, the biggest mistake I see with fasting is how long do I need to fast for weight loss? So if I often hear I can only lose weight if I fast. And if someone can only lose weight if they fast, then they've got to fix what's broken before they start fasting. So my rule of thumb has always been fueling before fasting, which means we must figure out what to do in our eating window the correct way, the correct balance of macros before we start extending our fasting window. Because where you'll see problems is when you're not doing the correct thing in your eating window, and then you try to extend your fasting window, then that's going to flop. You're going to crash your hormones, and a lot of problems are going to happen. So I just want to clarify and say, I believe in fasting. I think fasting is a great tool. It's a great thing to add in once someone gets to a place where it's time to pull that lever, so to speak. And until then, and I say too, a lot of women have done too much fasting just in their dieting history. And I also want to say, you don't have to ever fast again. You don't have to ever fast in order to lose weight. That's all about the food and the movement. The fasting benefits are, yes, autophagy, cellular repair, some detox, anti-aging type stuff. Absolutely. And even there's definitely research on hormone, the benefits for hormones as well. But again, you don't ever have to fast in order to lose weight. Shouldn't have to fast in order to lose weight.
Right. And I wonder too, I kind of have found for myself that, now that I've been doing this a while, that I've kind of come into a certain amount of fasting, because I wake up in the morning and I don't eat until I'm hungry. And sometimes that's different for me. I used to eat a lot earlier, but now that I'm nourished, I feel like I go longer in the morning and sometimes till lunchtime before I eat. And, it seems like having all of these things kind of regulate themselves. It's taken a while, but it has finally come to that. Do you think that that's a healthy thing?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I think that there's definitely different thoughts around, eating earlier in the morning versus later and that kind of thing. But I think like when you get to, you've been doing this for a while, you've been experimenting with different things, you've kind of, now you're in a place where your body is sort of intuitively telling you and it's working, right? That's the biggest key, that it's working. If someone's trying to force something either way, eating too early, too late, whatever, and it's not working, or they're not feeling better, or they're not seeing results, obviously, then that's, we need to go a different direction. So
I
And
always
if you
found
wake up-
that idea of, if you're not hungry when you wake up in the morning, something's wrong. And that doesn't feel like I said, I feel like I don't need to eat till much later. And that hearing that was like, what do you mean? Like I have to wake up famished every morning, because I definitely don't.
right. And I think that, there are some who will say like, oh, if you don't wake up hungry, I think you're just saying like something's wrong. And I don't think that's the case. I mean, I know of people who have never been hungry since they were young, early in the morning, and they've just always followed their natural cues. And those tend to be the people that are healthier than those of us that didn't and listen to, eat 6 small meals a day and do all this, stand on your head and do backflips in the diet industry to get results that never happened.
I was just going to say, but if you did happen to wake up one day and you were just famished, you would eat, right?
Yeah.
That's the
Definitely.
important part, instead of trying to eat as soon as you wake up if you're not hungry, or trying to wait too late to eat even when you are hungry. It's just about listening to what your body is telling you.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I have days that maybe I haven't gotten as much fat as I normally would, and the next day I wake up and you better watch out, because I need to eat right this second. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, usually around lunchtime is the first time I eat, and it just feels natural.
Right.
Yeah.
So the only other questions that I had are kind of just for my own personal questions.
Sure.
And so you just released the free core guide that you announced to everybody on your Instagram. Have you ever thought about like writing a full-on book?
You know how many times I've been asked that stuff?
Probably not the first person to ask this.
I've asked that a lot of times. Yes, I mean, I've thought about it, but at this point, the thought is a little overwhelming for me. I obviously, I like to do smaller sort of pieces of valuable content like that. Maybe one day. I'm not gonna, never say never, but yes, I will say thank you for asking. I've been asked that question quite a few times for sure.
I'm going to start taking notes on all those gems that you put out there, and then I'll just send it to you. And
oh my gosh, yes, that would be amazing.
Put it into book form.
Should I send you the 7,000 screenshots that are in my screenshot folder? You could help me keep going.
I'll write it for you.
Right.
So amazing.
And then the second part of that question was just like the core guide, maybe a guide on lab values and optimal lab values.
Yeah, I actually have one in the works. It's a little bit more challenging though, just because I still need to somehow figure out a way to be like, okay, this is the general information. These are, someone can look up optimal ranges online. There's, Dr. Detoxification, I believe, was the first one that came up with optimal ranges in the functional world. So they're not a secret by any means. However, it's always in the interpretation of all the markers together. And if I think I was writing, where was I writing this? Maybe it was in one of my Q&As from my stories yesterday. Someone had asked me about thyroid markers, and I had said something about reverse T3. And if reverse T3 is elevated, well, where do I look? I look at insulin, I look at estrogen, I look at, there's multiple places where all of these markers can sort of guide you to look at what's happening with that person. So to your question of, a guide with lab values, yes. And how do I write that so it's not people don't take that as a diagnostic tool, versus valuable information. So yes, I have one that actually is in the background. I do have one started. It's just that one's a little bit slower process.
No pressure, but we'll be looking for it.
Yeah. We'd appreciate it.
Yeah. And then the last question would be, would you ever consider creating an online course for coaches?
Another, so that's also been in the back of my mind to coach coaches as well. And so I will say, I love working with clients. Here's the problem. I love working with clients one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
I love doing group programs. Steph, you've experienced my groups. Amy, I hope one day you'll get to.
I will, I promise.
I love helping coaches. Like, sometimes, I'll consult with coaches or they'll reach out to me for a question or something. I love doing that too. I love doing a lot of things, but you know what? I am only one person.
Yeah.
So, I think still at this point, my calling is I'm trying to figure out, I'm working on some different ways of how I could do more groups and get to more people with some of the work I do in my one-on-one practice with the testing and stuff like that. So that's there's a lot in the back of my mind, but yes, that's another one that I've considered too. So
yeah, that would be fantastic. I'd be the first one to say.
Yeah.
So I think that's all the questions. For now, we'll think of a bunch more and then ask you to come back. But if you want to tell people where they can find you, how they can work with you one-on-one or in the groups. I'm really enjoying the group that I'm in with you right now.
Thank you for that. So yeah, I work with clients one-on-one and in groups, as Steph said. Best way to reach me is either my website, nutritionthenaturalway.com, or my Instagram at carnivore.keto.fitness. Message me, email me, Dani@nutritionthenaturalway.com. Those are the 3 best ways to reach me. And yeah, I like to, I schedule everything myself. I don't even have a scheduler because I like to communicate with everyone that sends me an inquiry. Yes, I know I make it a little bit harder for myself that way. And maybe one day I won't, I'll have to switch that. But at this point, I do like to, make contact with everyone who sends an inquiry. And those are the best ways. When we start with, in one-on-one practice, start with a jumpstart session. I'll have the client do some background paperwork and food log, and we get together for that session and really just kind of learn more about what's going on for them, what their challenges are, what symptoms they're having, give them some next steps, next step kind of coaching of what they can do, what they can start to do next right away. And then go over various programs if they want to move forward, or they can, I've had handful of women that just meet with me for that jump start and go on to lose 10 pounds, which is all they needed to do because they were just at the end of the journey and they needed a little bit of just tell me how to upgrade what I'm doing kind of thing. And to the client that works with me with, extensive testing and for 10 to 12 months after the fact. And then as far as my groups go, right now I'm looking at running a group on a quarterly basis. So the next one will start March 1st. And then I have some other group ideas in the back of my head, but I'll have to leave those in the back of my head at the moment.
Surprise us.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
So if you follow Dani on Instagram, she posts a lot of that stuff there. She has links there. We'll put all of those links in the description down below too. And thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dani.
Of course. Thank you, ladies, for having me. Greatly appreciate it.
We'll talk soon. Thanks.
Take care.